Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Bovine. This month, Alberta Beef Producers delegates, staff, and guests met in Red Deer, Alberta for the annual general meeting. Today, we're joined by ABP General Manager Brad Dubeau and Chair Dr. Melanie Wowk to recap the event. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Melanie, let's start with you. This was the first in-person AGM since 2019. What was the feeling of the room?
Feeling of the room, I believe, was excitement, and it was just fantastic to see people, to talk to people, to be able to discuss and see friends and fellow producers. And it's just, I think, a feeling a little bit of maybe things will start getting back to normal, and it was refreshing.
Brad, it was your first in-person AGM in the role of general manager. How did you feel about the event overall? Were there any surprises for you?
You know, not really. It was interesting because we had moved from Calgary up to Red Deer to participate with ABIC. And unfortunately, ABIC got postponed. So we made the decision we were going to go ahead and we were going to continue to host it in Red Deer. And see what that was like. Give producers or our delegates the opportunity to talk to us about that new venue and see if, that was the right fit for us. We were a little unsure what to expect from the delegates, but in the end, it seemed like everybody melded very well to the new venue. Everybody was excited to be back face to face, and there were some really good conversations held to try to determine the proper direction for Alberta beef producers.
There were no elections this year, but we did see a number of people hang up their hats as directors and delegates, and we saw some new faces. You've had a brief meeting with the new board, Mel, saw some interaction from the new delegates, and maybe had a chance to get to know each other a bit more during breaks. How do you feel about the 2022-23 roster?
I think it's great. We're seeing a lot more youth in Alberta Beef Producers, which for a while, that was our goal, was to bring a little bit more of the generation below us into the mix, and we realize that they are extremely busy raising families and developing businesses, but it's really nice to see some younger people. As I said during the ABP or during the AGM, that I am in the sunset of my career, and there were several other delegates that are in the same positions. It's important for us to be there as well to provide a little bit of guidance and maybe some experience as to what up to 30 years in the beef industry have shown us. But great, we do have some new board members as well. We have increased representation on the board from the north, which is extremely exciting for me to see. And so hopefully we will get down to work here next week. We've got our first ABP Board of Directors meeting next week, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from the new directors.
You mentioned some of the youth. What do you think's bringing these different perspectives and some more people in the north? Is it something ABP has done?
I believe so. I believe our communications platform has improved significantly, and has, it was something that we had discussed a lot as a board years previous. Is how to reach our producers better, and our producers were often telling us that they didn't know what was going on. And I think that with all these new platforms, including this podcast, it's just increased people's knowledge. I hope it's increased their excitement over what they can do for the beef industry. We realize that obviously we've hit some hard times. We're already hitting a significant issue here this week, but I'm just hoping that it's something that they feel is worthwhile to put their time towards. And it's it's going to be an engaging place to be for sure this year.
Brad, the communications piece has kind of been a passion project of yours. A lot of changes in the last year. What did you hear from producers about the magazine, the digital platforms?
So if we start with the magazine first and foremost, there is no doubt that there are varying opinions on the magazine. Some are ecstatic, some not so much. But the whole point of the magazine is people or our producers need to make sure that they are able to access information coming from their commission in the format that they choose to engage with. And the magazine is a great tool for those producers that would still prefer to sit down at the end of the day at some point and flip through something and read different articles that pertain to their industry and what the commission is doing, as well as what their national orgs are doing or other provincial member associations. Everybody is welcome to participate in that magazine, and it truly is a place for us to connect with the industry on a different level so that we can try to give updates about what's going on in the commission, not so much just hardcore facts, but through story. And if need be, we can extend that story over multiple issues as a particular issue may be changing or evolving over time. So it's a really great opportunity for those producers that prefer not to use more modern technology. When it comes to the ABP Daily and the app and the Bovine, there's lots of producers out there now that prefer more modern technology. And again, we're trying to create a platform that allows for producers across this province to engage with their commission on how they choose best to. And so it's I think exciting times. It was a passion when I came into the position because there was so many comments around how the commission was communicating or not communicating. And so we really tackled it head on and tried to develop a platform that producers can engage with. And it's really important that a commission is not supposed to be a place where everybody comes to agree. The commission is a place to give producers the opportunity to discuss and debate, and through those conversations, be able to try and find the best path forward on the different issues that we face on a day-to-day basis. It is truly the conduit for advocacy for producers. And so I'm very proud of the tools. And I know that we'll continue to have some debate, but around the magazine, there was limited debate, many suggestions, which we will incorporate, or at least take the information and see how it works or doesn't work within our current platform. And we're always looking for those opinions from our producers. But we will go into year 2 with the magazine as well as the other more technical tools. And we're going to continue down that path, and we'll do a full evaluation again at the end of year 2 on where we're at with all of our tools.
You mentioned some of the concerns that you were hearing. One that you didn't mention is maybe the financial situation, and it's something that I want to touch on later when we get to resolutions. But what do you say to those producers who say, the magazine and these new tools are great, but we're in a tough spot right now. How can we afford it?
Yeah, and I appreciate you asking me the question, Debra, because it's important for producers to understand that prior to the new tools being launched, Alberta Beef Producers was already investing approximately $180,000 to $200,000 in the former tools that we were using, which we weren't getting the uptake that we were hoping for. So we redirected those funds into the new tools, as well as the magazine offers a place, as well as ABP Daily, for businesses and producers, if they choose to advertise with us, a place where they can connect. If they find value, then hopefully, or our plan is to move or to be able to get to a revenue neutral situation around the new tools. And hopefully, as we get better and our tools get stronger, and there's more, we'll build a reputation around the magazine, that investment will help us offset our costs in communication, allowing us to invest in other programs that are so important at Alberta Beef Producers.
How long do you foresee that taking?
We are hoping that it will happen by the end of year 2.
I want to move into resolutions now. We saw 14 going into the AGM. 7 of those were carried. Obviously, we don't have time to detail all of them, but I do want to talk about a couple. The first is number 6. Be it resolved, ABP lobby the Government of Alberta to develop an emergency or disaster compensation plan that is automatically triggered when counties declare an agricultural emergency or state of agricultural emergency or disaster. Mel, this came from your zone, I believe. Can you give us a bit of background on it?
Sure. So I think with the drought this year, we saw that, although we have stated several times that the Alberta government and AFSC did work very closely with us and did move very quickly in regards to getting some funding to producers because it was realized that this was a true agricultural emergency. Having said that, we were behind the eight ball, and especially when it came to the American producers who, because they were going into their second year of drought, triggered a lot of their disaster recovery programs earlier than us. And they were therefore able to come up and start purchasing a lot of the feed that was available up here, which again, in turn, resulted in higher feed costs and just, no feed available. Because not only was it Alberta, it was Saskatchewan and Manitoba, Western Ontario, and a lot of the northern states. So we got into a bit of trouble that way. And that was one thing that producers have told us is that, although the payments came in October, it was maybe a little bit late. And so what we are really trying to focus on now is some type of recovery program that just triggers a little bit faster. If your county declares an agricultural disaster or emergency, that there is some type of trigger so that there is money in place to be released to those producers that need it right away. And I think we're seeing the second thing with the second part of this agri-recovery program where the federal funding is coming through. Although it's been in place since September, we are just starting to see phase 2 of the payments now. It's a long stretch for people to go with limited funding, to try and get those bills paid between October and now. And then, there was some uncertainty as to whether the full funding would be released. We have received confirmation from Minister Horner that the funds are in place and they will be released and people will get their payments. But, one thing we learned from this disaster, and they say there's always a good lesson in a good disaster, is that we need to trigger things a little bit faster and have, I'm not going to say better, but different, a slight improvement on the programs that we have now in order to be, ready next time. I think Alberta Beef Producers had a large part in playing how quickly that their government recognized what was going on. But again, sometimes the wheels move a little bit too slowly, and we'd like to see that improved a little bit next year. Next year, hopefully, but years to come.
And if I could just add a little bit to that, we would encourage those producers that if you haven't already done so, to get connected to AFSC and get signed up so that they are on AFSC Connect. And that will also help speed the process. Just that little piece, I would encourage producers to check that out if we continue to see difficulty in a drought situation.
It seems like a pretty big ask to change that much. What do either of you have an idea? And I know it's really early days. Do you have an idea of sort of what your first steps will be on that resolution?
I think we're probably on about step 4 or 5 now, because we have been working closely with AFSC and with the government regarding our business risk management programs as well as our disaster programs. So that includes ag stability as well as livestock price insurance. Our government relations person, Mark Lysing, has been working very, very hard on this. And we are asking for changes, pretty significant changes in some of these programs. And AFSC, as well as the government of Alberta, has responded in recognizing that some major changes need to be made. And we are, I'd say, in the middle of that. Wouldn't you, Brad, right now?
I would agree with you 100%, and we'll continue to explore areas that will make all these programs better for producers.
A couple of the other resolutions, 10 and 12, talked about lobbying for the removal of barriers to interprovincial trade and for changes in export requirements to cross the border to the States. Mel, from what you heard at the meeting, how important are changes like these to producers and to the industry?
I think they're extremely important. That's one thing that, the farm to plate movement has shown us, that consumers are now starting to want to know exactly where their food is coming from, and a lot of them want that farm fresh beef. And the difficulty is that if those animals are provincially inspected, then they cannot be sold in other provinces. Our feeling is that we need to come up with a more linear model for all these provinces so that we can see trade interprovincially without having the federal CFIA plant inspections done on them. It'll just allow for freer movement, and it'll allow for the movement of these goods through the provinces. As far as the beef crossing the U.S., so that was more in relation to boxed beef crossing. Boxed beef is inspected in Canada, where it is then put on a truck that is sealed. The seal must then be inspected by a veterinarian at the border, and there's only certain border locations where that can be done. We saw where this created a tremendous issue when the Coutts border was closed because of the blockade. It's our feeling, or the producers' feeling of this province, that we would like to see, when that truck is sealed up here, that it can possibly be inspected by just border guards at any border crossing, and then the seal is inspected at its final destination and guaranteed that it has not been tampered with. That will make things a lot easier, a lot more ports that they can go through, faster moving of boxed beef, and especially if we run into issues like we did at Coutts this year.
Brad, do you have anything to add to that?
I think just to clarify that part of this negotiation has to take place with the USDA. And so it needs to be inspected by the USDA, and they're only at so many border crossings. And so this would allow, like Mel said, more opportunity to access other ports. But there is definitely a lot of conversation that will be required around this, and with our partners at CCA and so forth, as we try to work to some solution.
I just want to add too that I think some of the pushback from this was that, it's not on us. It would be a USDA decision, like Brad said. But our issue here is that we need to keep the CFIA aware of this, and I'm sure that they are in constant discussions with the USDA. And it's a topic that can be brought up and hopefully worked on. We realize that we can't do much from our end other than to keep people aware, and I think a lot of times that is a big part of what our association does.
The final resolution I want to touch on is maybe one of the harder ones to talk about. Number 5 and 13. 13 was called redundant, spoke to Alberta Beef Producers' move in how it funds the Canadian Cattlemen's Association, CCA. Melanie, can you start just by providing a bit of background on the board's decision around this?
And this was a biggie. We knew it was going to come up, and we are glad it did, because we wanted to hear from the producers of this province where they stood on this this motion from the board. This year, we were hit straight on with what our financial difficulties were. And, it's no secret that we are a refundable checkoff. We have a very unique position here in Canada in that we have some extremely large producers in our province. And as a result, we do have quite a bit of money that is refunded. Part of the issue is that when that money is, that provincial portion of that checkoff is refunded, 53 cents of that $2 goes to support the Canadian Cattlemen's Association. Now, when we refund that money, that 53 cents still has to be paid. And so we are in a position as a business, on the business end of things, where we are paying on gross marketings instead of retained. And what our board passed this year, this is not the first year it has been brought up, but this is the first year that this board was determined to come to a decision about what we were going to do. And that is that we will continue to pay our full CCA assessment for the next year. That was the deal that we had with them, was a 5-year deal. We will agree to pay to 2023, but at that time, Alberta Beef Producers has decided to go to retained marketings in regards to payment. Extremely difficult decision. We know that this marks a significant amount of money to the Canadian Cattlemen's Association, but at the end of the day, I believe that our producers felt that what ABP is doing is important, that we couldn't go to any further budgeting cuts without significant reduction in programs and the ability to maintain our objectives here at ABP. And I think that was loud and clear. I will make the comment that when the resolution was voted on, it was a unanimous vote to go to retained earnings and maintain the board's motion.
Brad, ABP shared a 3-part series on its tough fiscal situation in the magazine and on Daily, and it's made more cuts than what we mentioned with CCA. I guess, first of all, what do you hope people took from those articles?
Well, and I'm glad you asked that question as well, because it was important for me and our board of directors to really highlight to producers the fiscal situation of Alberta Beef Producers and what we were facing. And using the magazine and our ABP Daily and other tools was to just elevate. And through that 3-part series, we were trying to give producers a better understanding of how the commission works, what we all fund, and some of the very difficult decisions that we've had to make around potentially cutting back, not only into CCA down the road, but in some of the organizations that we were instrumental in helping to get off the ground, like Cows and Fish and Ag Safe, for example. Those organizations do tremendous work for producers in this province, and we had to unfortunately cut them by half because we were trying to maintain as much programming at ABP as well as fulfill our obligations to CCA without continuing to deplete our reserves. And those reserves are there for times of difficulty in trade actions. And so really difficult decision making. And the whole purpose was to just elevate and make, hopefully, to allow producers to understand our situation better. And interestingly enough, we did see allocations to the CCA go up. We saw allocations to Alberta Beef Producers go up. So I think producers started to understand, and at the end of March, we will know for sure where we're at when we complete the fiscal that we're in right now, but it's looking much more positive. And it will allow for ABP to meet its obligations if everything remains the same. It'll allow for us to meet our obligations similar to the budget that we had last year or the fiscal that we're in right now, as well as meet our final year of the agreement under CCA with very minimal dipping into the current reserves.
Is it possible to decrease the funding to all of these organizations and also maintain good relationships with them?
And that's the struggle, is they all understand our situation. So, when I had to make those really unpleasant calls to the organizations that unfortunately we had to reduce some of our funding to, every one of them said, we understand the situation that Alberta Beef Producers is in. Of course, they're disappointed, and we will continue to make sure that they are communicated to, they understand where we're at. We will maintain those relationships as best we can and continue to work on some sort of solution to the fiscal situation that we are in currently.
Mel, we kind of have a general idea now, I guess, on the tough situation ABP is in, but how do we shift that conversation to the positive? What are the organization's next steps forward?
Our next steps are to develop a working group with all facets of the beef industry. We realize that there are certain groups out there that possibly feel that their checkoff money is not going towards some of their concerns, and possibly that Alberta Beef isn't all encompassing, and we are really moving towards trying to develop a group that involves the whole industry in some way so that we can return to a fully funded beef industry. There is importance in our industry having a voice and being able to bring our issues forward to government, bring the importance of Alberta beef to consumers, and we would like to see the industry as a whole move forward and be able to, as I said, fully fund our industry.
Brad, when can we expect to see this working group, and what does it look like?
We've taken the initial steps, and there is a representative from one individual from each zone to start the conversation. And we're starting to look at what options potentially could be on the table, that then when we invite the membership organizations that represent Alberta producers in this province as well, that we can start a conversation. We have a platform, we have a starting point where then we can determine what frustrations they have, and where we can succeed together, and how we can drive the industry forward to potentially return back to a fully funded Alberta beef industry. We have in this province the most to lose by not properly funding our organizations that advocate on producers' behalf. But at the same token, potentially over the years, maybe the organizations have become a bit disconnected to producers. So we're on the track to try to develop a new plan that, with changes to the commission, that we get back to our roots, and we are making sure that we are advocating on producers' behalf, and that all voices that represent producers in this province have a voice at the table. So it's the start of, I would suggest, some very interesting conversations that we're planning on holding over the next year. And this will be an Alberta beef industry solution with the member organizations in this province. And we're looking forward to seeing how we can potentially come out with a really successful plan to drive us all forward.
Brad and Mel, you've had a tough first year. You've come over a lot of challenges, and it looks like we're heading into a few more already. I hope that you're still somewhat excited to be representing us for another year.
I am. I learned a lot last year. I said that this is the hardest thing I have ever done in my life, and that includes large animal practice. This has been, it's been happy, it's been sad, it's been frustrating. It's been me asking Brad, what did you do in your past life that has brought us to this point? And interestingly enough, now with the talk about the potential railway strike, right first thing this morning when I opened up my emails, there was interview requests regarding that. And sitting across the breakfast table from my daughter, she said, "Welcome to day 2, Mom." So, but we have unbelievable support at ABP through our staff. They are, and you included, Debra, are an incredible group of people. And boy, I lean hard on you guys, but I have never been disappointed, and I'm looking forward to hopefully keeping this industry going and increasing the sustainability of it.
Brad, are you excited for another year?
Absolutely. There is no doubt that, since I have come into the position back in July of 2020, we faced a lot of challenges. And those challenges were more difficult to handle during COVID. You didn't have the opportunity to sit down and really be able to hash things out. And, everything was from a computer. And so it's been interesting, challenging, but I really believe there are better days ahead in this industry. There is no doubt we have faced some very, very challenging situations, but you continue to plow away. You pick them, or you pick yourself up, you handle one at a time, and you just keep moving forward. And I would concur with Mel that the staff at ABP has worked tirelessly over the last year handling these issues and just done a phenomenal job of it. And we are a small team, but we are a mighty team. And then working with the other membership organizations has been getting stronger and stronger over the course of the last several months and since July 2020. I made a commitment that we were going to continue to develop relations along with cattle feeders, but with Western stock growers and AGLA, and make sure that everybody had a feeling that they were welcome to to voice their opinions. And so we continue to work on those relationships. We'll continue to handle the very challenging issues that are in front of us, like CP Rail. We look forward to supporting the CCA, the national cattle feeders and Alberta cattle feeders on their direction in this situation, and we'll be playing our own part to try to help find solutions prior to it becoming an even more desperate situation in our industry. So yeah, it is never not interesting, and it is never waking up and thinking, what am I going to do today?
And with that, I'll leave you to doing all the things you have to do today. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. And we appreciate the great work you've done on this podcast as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Debra.
That was Alberta Beef Producers General Manager Brad Dubeau and Chair Melanie Wowk providing some of the highlights of ABP's 2022 AGM. You can keep up to date on the happenings at ABP by reading through our quarterly paper magazine, heading to abpdaily.com, signing up for our monthly newsletter, following us on social, and listening to The Bovine. Thanks so much for joining us today, and that's all for this special edition of The Bovine.